Hello again. In today's video I will be introducing you to the early Christian creation story as told in the ancient literature that was found in a seal jar near the area of Nag Hammadi in Egypt. Some of you may already know me as an environmental scientist. But today I'm here to discuss something close to my heart. As has been often reported, I grew up in a community that practices an early form of Christianity that I prefer to call Gnosticism. In this three-part series I will be using a book called Early Christianity by Jenny Monch, and for my purpose of education, she is willing to send you the book as a free file if you email your request to the address below. Now, I will discuss what was in the literature that Rome found so offensive. We will begin with the story of creation, which begins before the birth of the Creator. I want to prepare you for the cosmology in this story. Descriptions of space, travel to other planets and galaxies is everywhere. The ancients did understand the planets, spheres, their orbits, and even the existence of galaxies, eons. The manuscripts sometimes reads like science fiction. In the Pistis Sophia Book 1, Mary explains that, "The first then, who were created before us, are the invisibles, for indeed they arose before mankind, they and the gods and the rulers." In Book 2, Jesus introduces us to Sabaoth the good, whom I have called my Father. At first, he was alone in the darkness, then he became acquainted with the great invisible spirit, the Barbelo, that the Egyptian Gospel describes as the masculine female virgin, who became pregnant and bore Jesus. And there you have it, the original Holy Trinity, Father, Mother and Child. We will discuss the progression of the Trinity later in Part 3. Many other realms were created, and entities to rule over them. One of the most famous entities is Sophia, mother of the Creator. Her story is documented well in the Pistis Sophia, a book that was loved so much that copies of it were hidden and somehow escaped the Roman fires. In this book, Jesus tells Sophia's story to the disciples. I entered into the 13th aeon and found Pistis Sophia below the 13th aeon all alone and no one of them with her. She was grieving because she was not being admitted, as every entity had its place in a hierarchy of eons, and although you were allowed below your aeon, you were not allowed to go above it. But she was ambitious and this caused the others to hate her. She is also curious, and after Jesus leaves her, she sees the great light power of Yaldabaoth on a planet below her, so she investigates. Unfortunately, this is a trap that the jealous rulers have set up for her, and as she gets closer to the planet to observe the great lion-faced ruler, she is captured. They try to take her light power, and she fights them off and cries out. She can see the rulers of the eons looking on, rejoicing at her peril. "I had done them no ill, but they hated me without a cause," she laments. Jesus is concerned and wants to help her, but his father refuses to allow him to rescue her until after she had lamented several times and sang several songs of praise. Only then is Jesus allowed to send the angels, Gabriel and Michael, to help. Jesus explains, "I gave unto them the light stream and let them go down into the chaos to help Pistis Sophia, and to take the light powers, which the emanations of self-willed had taken from them, and give them back to Pistis Sophia." Finally, she is saved, but now, she is pregnant without her companion. This part is intriguing to me, as this woman is brave, and even though she is ashamed of her condition, nonetheless, she wants to have the child. She hides her condition and then hides the child, who is born, serpentine with a lion's face. He is given the name Ialtabaoth Saklas Samuel and is raised alone, hidden in the clouds, where he creates his own companions and then, they help him create the earth. He becomes God of the Jews and Creator of men. The cruel and wrathful God of the Old Testament. This is the first ruler, and it took great power from its mother, retreating from her and moved out of the place where it had been born. Taking possession of another place, it made for itself other eternal realms inside a luminous, fiery blaze, which still exist. And it became stupefied in its madness, which still is with it. But Sabaoth the good, Jesus' Father, sees what Ialtabaoth has done. He sees that he has made man to be his slave, to be without his own will. He placed them in a garden, but forbid them to eat of the tree of knowledge. In the hypostasis of the archons it states about the Creator, their chief is blind. Because of his power and his ignorance and his arrogance he said, with his power, "I am God, there is no other but me." When he said this, he sinned against all. This speech rose up to incorruptibility. Then there was a voice that came forth from incorruptibility, saying, "You are wrong, Samuel, that is, God of the blind." His thoughts became blind. In the more recently discovered Gospel of Judas, but God caused knowledge to be given to Adam and those with him, so that the kings of chaos and the underworld might not lord it over them. So, it is Sabaoth as a snake that convinces Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge. It was Jesus' Father who gave us free will. It was entities from his realm that encouraged a rebellion against their creator. But man continued to worship the cruel god Ialtabaoth, who brought down a flood and caused many other hardships on the people. So, he sent his son, Jesus, to earth. His mission was to convince the Jews to abandon their cruel god and follow his kind and loving Father. In the second apocalypse of James, he lectures those in Jerusalem that, "Your father is not my Father." Then he urges them to know the Father who has compassion. In the beginning of Basilides' myth, then the engendered, unnameable parent saw their ruin and sent its firstborn, the intellect, called Christ, to save people who believed in it from the authority of the beings that had crafted the world. So Jesus' mission is very clear: to convince the children of earth to stop worshipping their cruel creator and embrace his Father, who loved them. Now, ask a Roman Christian what Jesus' mission was, and they will recite a word salad that makes no sense. Why was monotheism so important to the Romans? This question and the curious removal of women will be discussed in Part 3. Until then, I'll see you in the near future.